He buried the outlaw in silence, then saw his name carved into the gravestone. Same name, same birth year, same face. The sun hung low and mean over the canyon, painting everything the color of old blood. Jake Harrow stood over the body, his shadow falling across the dead man's face like a promise kept too late. The dust hadn't settled yet. It danced in the air between them, between the living and the dead, between what was and what would never be again. The man had stopped twitching. That was good. Clean kills were easier to forget. But Jake couldn't look away from the face tilted sideways in the dirt, one eye staring at nothing, the other hidden beneath a lock of dark hair. They're the same shade as his own. He should check the body. Should make sure. The poster said dead or alive, but dead paid the same and caused less trouble. His hand moved to the worn paper in his vest pocket, feeling its edges soft from folding and unfolding. William Wild Bill Harrow, wanted for murder, robbery, and crimes against the railroad. $500. Enough to keep a man in whiskey and bullets for a good long while. But his boots stayed planted. The desert wind picked up, carrying the smell of sage and something else. Something that made him think of their mother's kitchen, of cornbread cooling on the windowsill while she hummed hymns nobody sang anymore. "Damn you," Jake whispered, though he wasn't sure if he meant the dead man or himself. He tracked Wild Bill for 3 weeks through hell and high water, following cold trails and colder leads. The outlaw had been smart, doubling back through box canyons and crossing rivers at the rocky shallows where horses left no prints. But Jake knew these tricks. He'd taught them to someone once, a lifetime ago, when the world was smaller and promises meant something. The dead man's lips were moving. No sound came out, just a shape of words fighting through blood and dust. Jake found himself kneeling before he decided to, his knee grinding into the sharp stones. He leaned close enough to smell the copper and gunpowder, close enough to see his own eyes looking back at him from a face 20 years older and 20 years meaner. "Jake." The word came out broken, more air than voice. "Jake, that really you?" His hand tightened on his pistol, though there was no need. The 3 bullets had done their work. One in the shoulder, spinning him around. One in the gut, dropping him. One in the chest, ending it. Professional. Clean. Nothing personal. Everything personal. "It's me, Billy." The name tasted like ashes in his mouth. He hadn't said it in so long it felt foreign, like speaking a dead language. "It's me." Billy tried to laugh, but it came out wet and wrong. Blood ran from the corner of his mouth, making a thin line down to his ear. "Knew you'd be the one. Knew it soon as I saw you. Coming over that ridge. Same walk. Same way of, hold your gun low." Jake's throat felt full of sand. He wanted water, wanted whiskey, wanted to be anywhere, but here, kneeling in the dirt next to the brother he'd sworn was dead to him. The brother who'd taken their father's watch and their mother's heart when he left. The brother who'd chosen the easy money and easier morals. "Why'd you run, Billy?" "Back at the creek. You could have surrendered. To you, Billy's I found has held it. Rather die than see that look. That righteous look. Always were the good son. There weren't any good sons in that house." Jake heard himself say it, surprised by the truth of it. They'd both run, in the end, just in different directions. Billy's hand moved, slow as molasses in winter. Jake tensed, then relaxed when he saw it was empty, just reaching. Those fingers, the same long fingers their mother said were made for piano playing, scratched at the dirt, pulling something free. A leather cord. A pendant. "Take it," Billy wheezed. Promised I'd give it back. But you know me, never was good with promises. Jake knew the pendant without looking. Their mother's locket, the one with their pictures inside, 2 boys with clean faces and cleaner consciences. She'd worn it every Sunday, every funeral, every time their father came home mean drunk and meaner sober. "She's dead, Billy. 10 years now." "I know." Billy's eye closed, opened again with effort. "That's why you gotta take it. Bury it proper. With her. Not with me." The wind died down, and in the sudden stillness, Jake could hear his brother's breathing getting shallower, further apart. Somewhere a hawk cried, the sound echoing off the canyon walls like a woman keening. The sun touched the horizon, setting fire to the clouds. Jake. Billy's voice was almost gone now. That poster. My name ain't really William Harrow. Jake's blood went cold. What? It's Jake. Jake Harrow. Been using your name all these years. Figured you weren't using it anymore. Figured it might bring me luck. The world tilted. Jake gripped the dirt, feeling it run through his fingers like time, like chances, like everything he tried to hold on to. His name on wanted posters. His name whispered in saloons and brothels, in places their mother would have wept to know about. You son of a bitch. Billy almost smiled. Yeah, that's what they all said. Jake Harrow's a real son of a bitch. Made you famous, brother. Made you somebody. Made me a killer. Made me hunted. Made you free. And then Billy was gone, just like that, between one breath and the next. His hand went slack, the pendant rolling into the dust. Jake stayed there, kneeling, as the sun slipped away and the stars came out one by one like bullet holes in the sky. He'd killed Jake Harrow today. Killed him dead and proper, with 3 bullets and a lifetime of practice. But sitting there in the gathering dark, he wondered which one of them had really died. The man who'd lived as Jake Harrow, wild and free and doomed, or the man who'd tried to outrun that name, only to find it waiting for him at the end of a gun? The pendant lay in the dust between them. In the morning, he'd have to decide whether to pick it up, whether to take it back to a grave that might not want it, whether to bury it here with a man who'd stolen his name and maybe, in some twisted way, lived the life he never could. But for now, Jake Harrow sat with Jake Harrow, 2 brothers with one name between them, while the desert wind began to blow again. It covered Billy's face with dust, grain by grain, like the earth was already claiming him. And Jake let it happen, because some things were better buried than remembered. The stars wheeled overhead, cold and distant, caring nothing for the names men gave themselves or the graves they dug with their choices. And Jake wondered, not for the first time and not for the last, which of them had chosen the harder path after all. The saloon squatted on the edge of nowhere like a dying animal. Its walls had given up fighting the desert wind years ago, and now they leaned into each other for support, holding secrets and smoke in equal measure. Jake pushed through the doors, Billy's blood still under his fingernails, the pendant heavy in his pocket like a stone. The place smelled of sweat and sour beer, of dreams pickled in alcohol and left to rot. A dozen faces turned toward him, then away, recognizing the look of a man who'd come to drink alone. The bartender, a Mexican with scars where his left ear should have been, poured without being asked. The whiskey was the color of muddy water and twice as bitter. You kill him clean? The voice came from the corner, where shadows gathered like old debts. An ancient man sat there, his face a map of every hard mile between here and Missouri. His eyes were sharp as broken glass. Jake didn't answer. Didn't need to. In towns like this, news traveled faster than horses. Figured someone would, eventually. The old man continued, fingers wrapped around a glass he hadn't touched. Wild Bill Harrow, Jake Harrow, whatever he called himself, boy was marked from the start. The whiskey burned going down, but not enough. Jake poured another. The bartender had left the bottle, knowing the look of a man settling in for a long conversation with his ghosts. You knew him? Jake heard himself ask, though he'd promised himself he wouldn't. The old man's laugh sounded like rattling bones. Knew him? Hell, boy, I was there when the Apaches took him. Him and his brother both. Twins, they were. Identical as 2 drops of water. Jake's hand stilled on the glass. The saloon noise faded to a distant hum, like flies buzzing around something dead. That was 25 years ago, up near Willow Creek. I was riding guard for a wagon train. Settlers, mostly. Good people trying to make bad land bloom. The old man finally sipped his whiskey, grimacing. The Harrow family had these 2 boys. Couldn't tell them apart, except one had a scar on his left hand from reaching for a hot skillet. Jake, I think. Or was it Billy? Jake had the scar. The words came out before Jake could stop them. You remember the day Billy had grabbed that skillet, trying to sneak cornbread before supper. Their mother had wrapped his hand in cool cloth, singing softly while tears ran down Billy's face. No, wait. That was wrong. He had grabbed the skillet. The scar was on his hand, wasn't it? He looked down at his left hand. A white line ran across the palm, faded but still there. Anyway, the old man continued, not noticing Jake's confusion. The Apaches came at dawn, killed most everyone. But those boys, something strange happened with those boys. The saloon door banged open. A woman entered, her profession clear in the tired paint on her face and the defiant lift of her chin. She scanned the room, her gaze sliding over Jake like he was furniture, before heading upstairs. Her footsteps echoed overhead, then stopped. The Apaches took them both, the old man said. But they didn't keep them together. One boy went with the war chief, Running Wolf. Raised him like his own son, they say. Taught him to kill quiet, live hard, trust nothing but his gun and his horse. Jake poured another drink. The bottle was already half empty, but the memories were still full strength. The other boy, though, the old man leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. A preacher's widow found him 3 days later, wandering the desert, half dead from thirst, speaking in tongues. She took him in, raised him on Bible verses and bitter charity. Tried to pray the wild out of him. Did it work? Jake asked, though he thought he knew the answer. What do you think? You can take the boy out of the desert, but the desert stays in the boy. Both of them grew up twisted, just in different ways. One learned to kill without conscience. The other learned to kill with too much of it. The old man stood, his joints protesting like rusty hinges. He dropped a coin on the table, the sound sharp in the smoky air. Funny thing about those boys, he said, moving toward the door. People say they met again, years later. Didn't recognize each other at first. How could they? One dressed like a savage, the other like a saint. But blood knows blood, even when the mind forgets. He paused at the door, silhouetted against the dying light outside. They say one brother had to kill the other, in the end. Had to, because they were too much alike to live in the same world. Same soul split in two, each half poisoning the other. The old man's laugh was dry as dust. But that's just talk. Old men spinning yarns to make sense of senseless things. The door swung shut behind him, leaving Jake alone with the bottle and the weight of untold truths. He drank steadily, methodically, but the whiskey couldn't wash away what rose in his throat. Memories came in flashes. Billy's face at 6 years old, dirty and grinning. Their mother's hand, their father's voice, before the drink took him. The sound of horses, screaming. The smoke from burning wagons. And after that, nothing but fragments. A woman's voice reading scripture. Or was an Apache warrior teaching him to track. Hard hands teaching harder lessons. Years blending together like water and dust making mud. Jake touched the scar on his palm. Billy had the same one. They'd compared them once, laughing at how even their wounds matched. But that was impossible. Only one of them had grabbed the skillet. Only one of them had cried while their mother sang. Unless the old man was right. Unless they really were two halves of the same soul, split by violence and raised by different kinds of darkness. One who learned to kill for survival. One who learned to kill for justice. Both of them using the same name, as if deep down they knew they were incomplete. The pendant in his pocket seemed to pulse with heat. Their mother's locket, with 2 boys' pictures inside. He pulled it out, clicked it open. The photographs were too faded to make out faces now. Just 2 small shadows, standing close together, before the world tore them apart. Jake closed the locket and stood. The saloon spun gently, but his hands were steady. Tomorrow he would ride to their mother's grave. He would bury the pendant there, along with whatever truth lay twisted between memory and myth. But tonight, he would drink to 2 boys who might have been one, to the brother he'd killed who might have been himself. He would drink until the past blurred enough to bear, until he could no longer feel the weight of a name that belonged to both of them and neither. Outside, the desert waited, patient as death. And somewhere in that vastness, the ghost of Billy Harrow, or was it Jake, seemed to whisper that some things were better left buried, but the living rarely had that choice. The morning came like a reluctant witness, gray and quiet. Jake found Billy's horse tied where he'd left it, behind a cluster of rocks that offered thin shade. The animal raised its head at his approach, nostrils flaring, recognizing the scent of its rider's blood on Jake's clothes. "Easy, boy." Jake's voice came out rough from whiskey and sleeplessness. The horse, a bay gelding with one white sock, stood still as Jake approached the saddlebags. His hands hesitated before unbuckling the worn leather. Going through a dead man's things felt like reading his diary, like trespassing on private ground. But Billy was past caring now. The first bag held what he expected: ammunition, a spare shirt that smelled of sweat and trail dust, hardtack wrapped in oilcloth, a bottle of laudanum, nearly empty, matches, a knife with a loose handle, the tools of a man who lived ready to run. The second bag was heavier. Jake pulled out a leather portfolio, cracked with age and bound with a strip of rawhide. Inside, papers, dozens of them, some folded, some rolled, some barely holding together, all covered in the same careful handwriting he remembered from childhood, when Billy would practice his letters by candlelight while their mother nodded approval. Jake's legs gave out. He sat hard in the dust, the portfolio in his lap, the morning sun creeping across the desert floor toward him like spilled honey. His hands shook as he unfolded the first letter. "Jake, I'm in Tombstone. Heard you might have passed through last spring. The bartender at the Crystal Palace said a man matching your description bought supplies and headed north. By the time I arrived, your trail was cold as winter iron. I've been using your name. I know I got no right, but it's the only way I could think to find you. Figured if I made enough noise, you'd come looking. Guess I figured right, though this isn't how I wanted it to end." Billy, the date at the bottom, was 3 years old. Jake set it aside, picked up another. "Jake killed a man today. Railroad detective. He had a wife, probably. Kids. They all do. I wonder if you still pray before you shoot. I wonder if God listens to men like us anymore. I remember when you taught me to aim. Breathe out slow, you said. Squeeze, don't pull. We were shooting kids off fence posts. Mama said we were wasting bullets. You said we were learning to protect what mattered. What matters now? I've forgotten." Billy, letter after letter, year after year. Some were long, rambling things written in the deep night when whiskey made the words flow like blood. Others were short, desperate scratches of ink. "Jake, where are you? Jake, I'm sorry. Jake, do you remember the songs Mama sang?" Jake read them all, sitting there in the dust while the sun climbed higher and the horse stamped impatiently. Each letter was a window into Billy's mind, showing a man slowly coming apart at the seams. The early ones were full of bravado, talking about scores and schemes, women and whiskey. But as the years wore on, they grew darker, more desperate. Jake met a woman in Amarillo who had eyes like Mama's. Couldn't look at her. Couldn't stay. The road's all I got now, and it leads nowhere except away from everything I ever wanted. Sometimes I dream we're boys again. Sometimes I wake up, and for a second I forget which one I am. The one who left or the one who stayed. The sinner or the saint. Then I remember we're both sinners now. Maybe we always were. Billy near the bottom of the stack. Jake found a letter different from the others. The paper was newer, the ink still dark. "Jake, if you're reading this, then you found me. Or I found you. Either way, it's over. I've been carrying your name like a cross for 15 years. Made it famous in all the wrong ways. I told myself I was living the life you were too good to live, taking the sins you were too clean to take. But that was just another lie I used to help me sleep. Truth is, I wanted to be you. Even when we were boys, you were the strong one. The one Mama looked at with pride instead of worry. The one who could choose right over easy. I chose easy every time. Still do. There's a woman in Tucson. Marie is her name. She's got a boy. My boy, though he doesn't know it. I've been sending money when I can. If something happens to me, look after them. The boy's got our eyes. Our mother's eyes. Maybe he'll grow up better than us. I know you'll be the one to find me, because I've been leaving a trail even you can't miss. Every job, every killing, every wanted poster with your name on it. Breadcrumbs leading you back to me. I'm tired of running, Jake. Tired of being half a person. When Mama died, I was in Mexico. Didn't find out for 6 months. By then, the ground over her grave had already settled. I stood there trying to cry, but nothing came. Just dust in my throat and this feeling like I'd lost my compass. You were my compass, Jake. When they split us up, I spun in circles for years. Still spinning. I don't ask for forgiveness. Something's cut too deep for sorry to heal. But I want you to know, I look for you. Every town, every trail, every face in every crowd. I look for my brother, for my other half, for the part of me that knew how to be good. Guess I found you in the end. Where you found me. Same difference. Billy P.S. I still remember the songs. Jake folded the last letter carefully, placed it back in the portfolio. The sun was full up now, beating down like a hammer on anvil. He could bury the letters with Billy, could burn them, could scatter them to the wind, and let the desert take these words the way it took everything else. Instead, he tucked the portfolio inside his own saddlebag. Billy's horse whinnied softly, and Jake looked up to see a rider approaching from the east, still too far to make out clearly. Could be anyone. Could be trouble. Could be salvation. Out here, they often looked the same. Jake stood, his body stiff from sitting, his mind heavy with the weight of borrowed time. All those years Billy had carried his name, all those letters never sent, all those chances to find each other that had slipped away like water through cupped hands. He had a woman and child to find in Tucson. He had his mother's grave to visit. He had a name to clean or bury. He wasn't sure which. But first, he had to decide what to do with Billy's body, waiting back in the canyon. Whether to bring him home or let the desert keep him. Whether to bury him as Billy Harrow or Jake Harrow or with just another nameless soul who lost his way. The rider grew closer, and Jake's hand moved to his gun out of habit. Some habits were harder to break than others. Some bonds were impossible to sever, even with death. He wondered if Billy had been right, if they really were two halves of the same soul, forever incomplete. And if so, what did that make Jake now? A whole man carrying twice the burden, or half a man pretending to be whole? The letters in his saddlebag seemed to whisper the answer, but Jake wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But he would carry them the way Billy had carried his name. Because that's what brothers did, even when it was too late to matter. The shovel bit into the hard earth like it was fighting him. Jake had been digging since noon, his shirt soaked through, his hands raw inside work gloves that had seen better days. The hole was deep enough now, deep enough to hold a man and his secrets both. Billy's body lay wrapped in the blanket from his bedroll, waiting. Jake had closed his brother's eyes, cleaned the blood from his face, even combed his hair back the way their mother used to do before church. Strange how the dead could look younger than the living. Death had smoothed away Billy's hard years, leaving only the face Jake remembered from childhood. The sun hung low, painting the canyon walls the color of dried blood. Same light as yesterday when Billy died. Same light as 20 years ago when everything went wrong. Some things never changed. The desert had its own time, its own way of marking what mattered. Jake climbed out of the grave, his muscles screaming. He'd found wood for a cross in an old mining shack, the planks gray with age but solid enough to last. With his knife, he carved carefully, each letter a small ceremony. William Billy, Harrow Jake Harrow brothers died, 1882, 2 names for 1 grave. It felt right somehow. They'd shared everything else, a face, a childhood, a mother's love. Why not share this too? He dragged Billy to the edge of the hole, paused. In his pocket, the badge pressed against his ribs. He'd forgotten about it until now. The tin star he'd earned in Kansas, upholding the law in towns that barely had any. Marshal Jake Harrow. Another name, another life. Another lie, maybe. Should have told you, Jake said to the wrapped form. Should have told you I was wearing a badge when I hunted you down. Would that have made it better or worse? No answer came. The dead were good at keeping secrets. Jake pulled out the badge, turned it over in his palm. The metal caught the dying light, throwing spots of brightness on the canyon wall. He'd killed plenty of men wearing this star. Told himself they deserved it. Told himself he was different from them because he had the law on his side. But what was law out here? Just men drawing lines in the sand, saying this side is right, that side is wrong. Billy had crossed those lines. So had Jake, in his own way. The only difference was which side of the badge they stood on when the shooting started. He thought about Maria in Tucson, about Billy's boy with their mother's eyes. A child who didn't know his father's name, who might grow up clean if nobody told him different. Jake could ride there, give him Billy's money, maybe stay a while. Be an uncle, be a father, be whatever that boy needed. Or he could pin the badge back on, ride to the next town, hunt the next outlaw. Keep being Marshal Jake Harrow, the man who always got his man, even when that man was his own blood. What would you do, Billy? Jake asked the silence. If it was me in that blanket and you standing here. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of sage and something else. Rain, maybe, though the sky was clear. In the distance, a coyote called, long and mournful. Its pack answered, their voices weaving together like a song of loss. Jake lowered Billy into the grave, gentle as their mother laying them down for sleep. He tucked the portfolio of letters beside the body. All those words finally delivered, even if too late to matter. Then he began to fill the hole, each shovelful a small goodbye. The work went faster than the digging. Soon there was just a mound of fresh earth, darker than the ground around it. Jake planted the cross deep, making sure it would stand against wind and time. 2 names on 1 marker. Let people wonder. Let them make up stories. The truth was buried deeper than any grave. He pulled out their mother's locket, opened it one last time. 2 boys, faces blurred by time and cheap photography. Which was which? Did it matter anymore? They'd started as one, split into 2, and now were one again in death, if not in life. Jake hung the locket on the cross, where it caught the last light of day. Their mother would have wanted them together, would have wanted them to forgive each other, to find peace. But mothers always wanted impossible things. The sun touched the horizon, setting fire to the clouds. In that light, Jake's shadow stretched long across the desert floor, reaching toward the grave. For a moment, it looked like 2 shadows, one for the man he was, one for the man he might have been, or maybe one for each brother, finally side by side again. He picked up the badge, weighed it in his hand. Such a small thing to carry so much meaning. He could leave it here. Let Jake Harrow the lawman die with Jake Harrow the outlaw. Start fresh somewhere nobody knew either name. But that was a young man's dream, and Jake wasn't young anymore. He was just a man with too many names and not enough reasons to use any of them. The badge went back in his pocket, but it felt different now. Heavier, or maybe lighter. He couldn't tell. Rest easy, brother, Jake said to the grave. Both of you. He turned away as the sun slipped below the horizon, taking the day with it. His horse waited patient as stone, Billy's bay beside it. 2 horses, 1 rider. Another choice to make. But not tonight. Tonight, he would make camp here, keep watch over the grave one last time. Tomorrow he would have to decide which shadow to follow, toward Tucson and a boy who deserved better than his blood would give him, or toward the next town and the next name on the next wanted poster. But tonight, he would sit with his ghosts and listen to the coyotes sing. Sometimes that was all a man could do. Sit with his choices and wait for morning to make them real.